Welcome to the Curator's Salon podcast. I'm your host, Geeta Joshi, and today my guest is author Susie Pearl. I'm a big fan of Susie's first book, Instructions for Happiness and Success, and the accompanying audios, and I returned to them recently. So I was delighted when I saw that Susie had a new book coming out this August called The Art of Creativity, and even more delighted that Susie has agreed to be on the podcast. Susie, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here.
Congratulations on the new book.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited about it coming out. It's felt a long time and finally we're here.
Yeah, well done. I mean, I loved Instructions for Happiness and Success. It was a book I really spent a lot of time with, and recently I was feeling like I just needed a little something, a little, it wasn't, the answer wasn't in the fridge, it was on the bookshelf, and kind of got back into back into it really and flow with it and stuff. It's been a really good book. So it was
it's a great book, and actually it was ahead of its time. I mean, I wrote it about 7 or 8 years ago, and it's a lot about frequency and attraction and vibration and how you manage all of those things. And I think now the topic is quite mainstream. We all talk about frequencies and states and so on. Back then it was kind of new, and I feel like I reread it again myself the other day, and I thought, yeah, it's more of the time of now than actually when I wrote it, so it's quite ahead of the curve, I think.
Yeah, I think I agree with that actually, because for me it just had a really nice accessible way into talking about manifesting and raising your frequency and vibrations and choosing better thoughts. Which, I think you're quite right. It's much more talked about now. And I don't know, maybe we're all more online now, so we can find these things much easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
So can you talk about your background, both as an author, but I know you've sort of worked in different industries as well.
Yeah, I've had a very colourful and varied trip through my career. I was working at MTV with big music artists for years, like the Spice Girls and Madonna and Lenny Kravitz, all sorts of people I was working with and looking after them and doing their press and talking about their stories and so on, and that was really fun. I was traveling a lot, and then I started my own PR agency, which was a celebrity PR agency. It's still going actually, and then I started working with Paul McKenna, who's a hypnotist, and worked with Richard Bandler and Paul, running their personal transformation company, which is all about teaching neuro-linguistic programming. Richard actually created it. He's the creator of NLP. So that was a very interesting thing, and it got me into mind tech and understanding the power of the mind and how we think and how we feel and how we use language really for really effective communication. So that got me very interested. As soon as I started working with them, my antennae shot up and I thought, this is my thing. I found my thing. So I wrote a book then. Paul went off to live in LA, and I wrote a book which was Instructions, which I got a deal for straight away. And I knew that was great, and I knew that was the start of my career as a writer. I then pitched a book out on creativity because I felt that was a really interesting concept, an idea. And then I fell ill. I got out of the blue. I was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and they said, honey, you've got 6 weeks. You got 6 weeks to live. I was like, oh. But I checked in with myself, and I knew that wasn't going to be my story. I have written a book on reality creation, and I decided I was in charge of my reality. And I knew that it was not my time to go, and I knew that I would make it through. So against all the predictions, doctors said, you've got really little or no chance, so get prepared. And I said, I don't feel that. My family, of course, were like, oh my goodness, no one believed my optimism. And no one, I've always been incredibly positive and very optimistic, but this time people were unsure, or more than that, they were pretty sure I wouldn't make it. So that was the challenge, and I was in hospital, and I started the book then, and I found I became, with this illness and recovering from the illness, I found all my fear dropped away, all my anxieties dropped away, and I had like a download of a different operating system, it felt like, and I suddenly became incredibly creative. And the book is a different book than the one I originally intended to write.
That is such a phenomenal story about your, with the brain tumor and getting through it. Can we just talk a little bit more about that? Like, I mean, what was that like? That I know you were into TM meditation, and then was it visualizing? It was obviously you knew you weren't going to leave this earth without having birthed this book.
Yeah, I knew I had to. I mean, I'm a mum as well. I've got a son, and I thought, I just don't want to leave right now. It's not my time. I knew it's not my time. And also, as I was going into the MRI scanner, I had the biggest inner sense, and this very strong intuitive voice said to me that I've got 3 brain scans. One's going to be terrible news. The second one, it's going to be much improved. And the third one, I will have a clean bill of health. And actually, that's exactly what happened, weirdly. So, I had a positive mindset that I could recover. I've also done a lot of work in mind technology with the work I did with hypnosis and theta healing. I went heavily into theta healing. I went heavily into Reiki, used CBD oil, positive visualization, prayer, meditation, and nutrition. I really upped my nutrition, made sure I was eating organic, healthy, very fresh. I was never a smoker or a drinker, or all that sort of thing. Even though I live in Ibiza most of the time, I was very healthy. Yoga, meditation every day. So I would not have been on your list to say, oh, she might get really ill. Quite the reverse. I felt very well. But I had a very stressful career. I was looking after very famous people for many years, flying around the world, running a business, running a PR agency, which is never easy, because when you run a PR agency, people always want less press, not to be on the front cover, or they want a lot more press than they're getting. So you kind of can't win on that job. But anyway, I had a very stressful life running around the world, very fun. Most people won't believe some of the things that I did, but that took its toll on my brain, and it caused it was almost, I felt like it was like my fuse box burnt out. I'd used my head so much and had years and years of intense work with little relaxation. In those days, I didn't really know how to, when I was working for MTV and doing the agency, I wasn't a meditator then. Subsequently, I found meditation, which has allowed my brain to relax and rest. And I realized the importance of that. I think one of the things with the lockdown and quarantine is that people are learning how to, for the first time, balance life and realize that we have been living very stressful lives that are really not sustainable on an environmental, a physical, or a psychic level. We have to calm it down, slow it down, spend more time in balance, not working so crazy, and look after ourselves a bit more.
Incredible. Thank you for sharing.
And what I found when I got ill, I was in the hospital. I had chemotherapy, I had stem cell replacement therapy, and so on. I wasn't keen on any of that. I mean, I would never take a paracetamol. I was really anti all sorts of, anti anything medical. I would always take herbal solutions or, find another alternative route that didn't involve chemicals in my body. However, I did agree, because my family insisted, that I did these classical treatments. So I prayed every day and asked my body to be able to take that high dose of really toxic stuff that you get when you're on chemo. It kills a lot of the bits that need to get destroyed, but it also destroys other things that are healthy. So I had very mixed feelings about it, and I just asked my body to be able to really cope with that and to process that as best I could and stay really healthy in the process. And now I've been given a clean bill of health, and in the hospital I suddenly found I was incredibly creative. I was asking people to bring in big sheets of paper, loads of pens, crayons, colours, and I was mapping out all these ideas for films and books and all sorts, and I was putting them all up on the walls in the hospital. And the doctors and nurses would come into my room and go, "Oh my goodness, what's going on here? I said, oh, it's okay. I'm writing a couple of books and I'm doing a film script and da da da. So I just went, I was manic. And a little crazy, some might say, but the creativity just went through the roof. And I didn't care about money. I didn't care about the old things that used to bother me, all went out the window. It was a very interesting journey.
Such an interesting story. Oh my goodness. I think one of the things you write in Art of Creativity is that everybody has a creative state, and often it's like suppressed because we're socialized, because we're told that we're not actually creative because we didn't pursue that as, as in the classroom.
So, yeah, absolutely. Every single one of us, if we're a human being, every single one of us has creativity within us. And it's often drummed out of us, sadly, through the education system or parents or peers or brothers or sisters or whatever. I was always not creative, supposedly, at school. I was told that my essays weren't very good. My English wasn't very good. I'd get very low marks in all of my essays. And now I'm a best-selling author. So it's a strange thing, isn't it? Same with Paul McKenna. He had terrible reports about... he would never come to anything. He couldn't write. English results were terrible. And he's, one of the best-selling non-fiction authors in the UK right now. So don't believe what people tell you around your creativity. I believe it's about accessing the flow inside yourself, which is quite a spiritual practice, actually. When I'm meditating, I get all sorts of ideas coming in. I feel my body relaxing. I feel that I get into a stream of ideas and creativity, which is not just me. I think I know that everyone can access this. We just need to take some of the tools and use them. And allow yourself to be creative. Pick up a paintbrush. And I think what's been happening in this lockdown, one of the big trends that's happened is that people not only have found out what Zoom is and how to run their businesses online, but also what's happened in the lockdown is people have turned to creativity to keep them calm, give them inspiration, give them something to look forward to. And many, many people I've spoken to have started drawing, painting, or designing, or writing, or, starting a blog, whatever it is. They've started a creative practice. And I think as human beings, that's what we do. Cavemen in their caves started drawing art. We can't help it. We're human beings, and we're meant to socialize, we're meant to interact with each other, and we're meant to be creative.
I love it. Yeah, totally agree. I've seen so many new and interesting projects come out of it. There's so many resources sort of coming out of lockdown just to get people, back into a state of play. And that's one of the things I think that is lost in adult life, and that's what sort of creativity kind of lets us, just get back to that freedom of just making, just for the sake of making. And then it often leads to something because it taps into a place where we kind of, it aligns with purpose and so on.
In my book, I talk about getting into different states and give examples and exercises of how to do that. Playfulness is right up there. Curiosity, all of these kind of states, highly creative. When you start playing, there's a lightness to everything. Things don't become so serious. And once you break down the barriers of being fixed about the way you think things should be and enter into a state of curiosity and playfulness and lightness and it doesn't matterness, then that's when ideas can come in. Your brain will allow a more fluid approach to looking at things. It makes you a better problem solver. It makes you more able to come into creativity and be able to expand. The other important thing to say about creativity is it's very healing. When you start getting creative, you start healing yourself, your body, your cells, your mind, and your soul. And it's a very beautiful way to express yourself. And the important thing is not to feel judged, not to worry about what anyone else says about your work. Do it. Just pick up a brush, pick up a pen, or start playing the guitar. Do not take any notice of other people's points of view. It's nothing to do with them, actually.
Yeah, that's true, actually. I think it can be very personal. So let's
Mm,
talk about some of the things that you mention in the book. Like, let's start with journaling. I love
mm,
journaling. If
mm,
I've gone a
mm.
day without spending time writing, I feel like I've kind of skipped a meal or something.
Yeah,
It's not good. And I think you certainly mentioned this in the book, but the idea of actually always handwriting it, and I've always found that really important as well. There's something about putting pen to paper rather than using the keyboard that's massively
absolutely.
sort of liberating about it, and it kind of comes from there's a different sort of freedom with it. And also,
Mm.
I think that the privacy part of it, right? Nobody, again, it's not a piece of work to be judged by anyone. It's just just writing from a place of, liberation.
Yeah. And you're emptying your brain onto the page and you give your mind a lot of space then. It's a bit like decluttering your house. Get it on the page, write it down. You're not writing it for anyone else to read. You're writing to get it out of your brain and onto the page. And when you've started writing, journaling is about you get a blank journal, which you keep private and to yourself. You get a pen or a pencil. And there's no form to this. There's no questions to answer. You just put your pen or pencil on the page and allow yourself to keep writing. Do this daily without editing yourself, without feeling you have to make it make sense. You just put down whatever. It's a stream of consciousness. It doesn't need to make sense. What happens is this wonderful expansion of the mind. Things will come up. Intuitive ideas will come up, things that you didn't even know you thought will come up and go onto the page, and you'll surprise yourself. And what it does is really release a lot of space in the head and give you access to this well of ideas that's deep inside you, and you'll sort out a lot of things. You'll sort out a lot of priorities, you'll have inspirations, you'll have ideas come through. It's one of the most healing, powerful and brilliant tools for manifesting that I know. I've dedicated a whole chapter in the book to journaling and some top tips and hacks on how to do it. And I've studied it extensively. I'm a big fan of journaling.
And then that leads us into one of the other things that you've dedicated a chapter to, which is meditation. I know we've touched on it already. You're a practitioner of TM, Transcendental Meditation. I mean, this is the one that a lot of celebrities, a lot of high-profile people refer to. Obviously, 4 different types of meditation. And I love, actually, that you really talk about breathing in the book as well, which many of us are not doing as well as we should be, something so simple. Can you elaborate a bit more on what TM meditation is and why that needs a trainer?
Yeah, transcendental meditation. So I talk about all the different, not all, but many different styles of meditation. And I tried many. When I was living in London, living this stressful life, I was having a meltdown one day and a girlfriend was round having tea. And she was a cancer survivor herself. She had cancer when she was 14 and she had her leg amputated. She was an artist, a very good artist, and she had trouble just walking every day. And yet she was one of the most colourful, upbeat, positive people I knew. And I said to her, Jo, how, I'm going through it at the moment. I'm melting down. I don't know what to do. And she looked to me and said, I know what you should do. And I went, please tell me. And she said, you should call this number and learn how to meditate and do TM. That's changed my life. So I did. I followed her advice. I called a TM meditation teacher in London and I enrolled myself onto a course. You get a mantra. You do it twice a day, 20 minutes. Start with less, but it comes down the lineage. It was brought to the West by Maharishi. In the 60s, the Beatles they made it famous. They were in India with Maharishi, and that's when they became very prolific. And when I talked to Paul McCartney one day about his songwriting, and he said, when I was learning TM in India with Maharishi, I woke up one morning and I just leant over and got a piece of paper and started writing the words to Hey Jude. And it came out in one go. And that was one of the effects of meditation, is that I would just get songs given to me. And this is the experience of many people. When you start meditating, you get big chunks of downloads. I had this with my book. You know, I would meditate and then suddenly I'd get an idea for something which would go into the book. For me, it has helped me heal. It's helped me de-stress from being a very busy business person. And it's given me great inspiration. And it's something that I use daily in my life. It's probably the single most important, other than learning how to speak English or a language, is the single most important thing I've ever learned. It's had a major impact in my life. And for sure, it helped me recover from my health journey. For sure. I've worked a lot with the David Lynch Foundation over the years. I support them heavily because they get TM meditation out to the world, out to women at risk, prisoners, veterans back from war, and people who are having difficulty pulling life together. And they support millions of people around the world. So I do a lot of work with them. And David Lynch is very supportive of my work. He's given me a front cover quote for the book, which is lovely. And I wouldn't be where I am today without TM meditation.
Phenomenal. I'm going to have to look it up and find a local trainer, I think, definitely.
Yeah.
It is the one that everybody says.
It's fantastic.
It's very impactful.
And it takes, I think, 4 days. I'm running a TM course where in Ibiza. I do it 2 or 3 times a year for people. I bring someone in from the David Lynch Foundation, a teacher. And I teach people. And it's one of the things that gives me great joy to do. You know, I feel like if I'm helping get this thing taught out, and there's a big community of people now TM meditating in Ibiza where I live, that's probably one of the best things I could spend my time doing. It's a really great thing, and it takes 3 or 4 days, couple of hours a day, and then you're good to go.
Fantastic. Right, I'm gonna definitely look that up after this call.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's one other thing in the book, and I'm just scanning through the book and I can't find it. But it was about resource states.
I started understanding a bit more about resource states through NLP, which is about one of the techniques of NLP is getting people into a particular resource state, and then you anchor it. It's called anchoring that resource state. So, for example, you could get into a state of happiness or peak performance or creativity. Or joyfulness, and all of these have a frequency. These emotions have a frequency, and will allow you to access, a different form of brainwave state, and that different form of brainwave state will give you a different outcome. So, sometimes you feel really motivated to sit down and do something that you love. You think, like this morning, for example, I went for a swim this morning. It's really hot where I am. I was swimming along in a beautiful place, a little cove in the sea. I was swimming along and I just thought, I can't wait to get back and write. I've got to write some blogs today. I can't wait to get back and write. That's a resource state. That's me being in a very powerful brainwave state of possibility and potentiality. In the book, I talk about different states of delta, theta, alpha, gamma, and how to boost your brainwaves into particular brainwave states that are helpful. Sometimes it's helpful to be dreamy. Sometimes it's helpful to be laser sharp and focused. Like if you're writing something, for example, or doing an exam, you're going to be in a particular brainwave state that keeps you sharp. Other times, if you're hanging out with friends, you just want to be relaxed. These are all different states and have different advantages. And I outline all of this in the book and give you really good tips on how to get there. And I'm a big fan of daydreaming, for example. Daydreaming's great. It's a really powerful resource state. When I was a little girl, my mum used to say, Susie, you've always got your head in the clouds. I went, Mum, I like it up there. But actually now I realise daydreaming, when when kids or adults just go off on a dreamy space, it's one of the best places to find out stuff you need to know.
So what I really like about that is actually in the book that you talk about how to get into those sort of states and explain them a bit more, because they're all on the the spectrum of emotions. They're all in the higher energy frequencies as well, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And things like passion and getting into the flow. passion is a great one, and feeling in the flow is great. When you lose a sense of time, you don't know where you are, and you suddenly look up and 3 or 4 hours have gone by. You're like, wow, how did that happen? It happened because you're in that brainwave state of really powerful state of being in this creative stream. And that is, again, it's a spiritual practice. Flirtation, confidence, being childish, all of these things are fantastically useful, and I write about them in the book. Being playful, using music, because the brain has this very great ability of neuroplasticity, which means we don't have a fixed brain. It's changing all the time. The different connections of all the neurons are changing, and as we get into different states, our brain behaves differently and allows us to do different things. And I figure, as human beings, is it not the most interesting thing ever to find out how your brain works? Because that's the thing we're going to be using day by day, moment by moment, for the rest of our lives. So we might as well understand how it works.
And that's another really good thing about this book, which is, it explains the science of it so simply without turning into a science book. It's not a biology book. It's actually, it's just written at a really nice level where I felt like it was not going too heavy on the science, and it was like the more implementable things that would just feel like really easy to actually get on and do straight away. So you worked with creative people. How did working with them sort of show up when you had your sort of more mindset training?
Yeah, well, it was interesting because I was lucky enough to work with Madonna very closely, Michael Jackson, people like this who are creative geniuses of our time. And my first day at MTV, I met Michael Jackson, was asked to go off and look after him. And he was rehearsing in the same room that I was in and asking me what I thought. And I got to see firsthand what these kind of creative geniuses are like when they're working. And it was fascinating. And that was one of the real triggers for getting me to write about creativity, because I saw the level of creativity. And Madonna has, 4 PAs, every half hour is scheduled for various things. It's very intense, but there is a mindset that goes with these people who have intense and high levels of creativity. It's a very interesting headspace, and I can see, when I look at those kind of personality types, I can see why and how they got to be the creative and successful souls that they are. And I write about this in the book as well.
Because I've heard stories about Michael Jackson kind of getting these, as you call them, downloads in the night, and then being really eager to kind of get them recorded, or, if it's a stage setting or something, get that design really quickly, because he always felt like Prince was biting at the heel. If he was, if he didn't get it done, then that download would drop over to Prince or, one of his competitors, in air quotes.
Well, a lot of the people I've interviewed for the book, I've interviewed a lot of people for the book, Paul McCartney, Russell Brand, all sorts of people, and they talk about ideas floating by. Katie Tunstall talked about ideas being like wisps of clouds passing by, and you have to jump up and bring them down. If not, they will end up with someone else. It's really who takes these ideas and runs with them, gets them, which is a cool idea. And it's kind of how I see ideas. They're all out there in the collective consciousness, and they drop into probably quite a few people at the same time. And I'm sure many people have experienced this. I have, where I have an idea and I see someone else has come out with it at the same time I had the idea, and I wish I'd run with that, because it is up there in the collective consciousness. And meditation and other techniques that I write about help you to bring those down and use them. So yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting idea. That's how ideas come. They're not your ideas. There are no new ideas. It's how we uniquely put different ideas together to something that hasn't been done before. That's what creativity is all about.
Love it. Yeah, I've definitely had that. I've had the idea, not run with it. But this idea that they are, just sort of bobbing through our, as you say, collective consciousness is fabulous.
Yeah.
Just there to be caught. Brilliant. Susie, thank you so much for being my guest on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I will add links into the show notes for the book, your Instagram handle, website, all the things. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, The Art of Creativity is available at good bookshops and on Amazon UK. So have a look for it there. It's just come out. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it and find it useful. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Curator's Salon hopes you enjoyed this production.